January 20th, 2025, a Chinese AI model quietly drops. Almost nobody in the West has heard of it yet. Within days, its app hits #1 in the US App Store, ahead of ChatGPT, ahead of Google, ahead of everything. Chinese AI lab shocks Silicon Valley. NVIDIA loses almost 600 billion in a single day. Stock market wipes out around 1 trillion, and nobody saw it coming. So I'm scrolling, January 20th, Monday morning. DeepSeek just dropped and it's actually good? Wait, this Chinese model is matching O1? How the fuck did they do this for around 6 million? Around 6 million. OpenAI O1 tens to hundreds of millions of dollars estimated. DeepSeek R1 a few 100,000 disclosed for the reasoning layer. Difference, dozens to hundreds of times cheaper. Dozens to hundreds of times cheaper. That cost gap is a big part why NVIDIA lost almost 600 billion in market value in one day, the biggest single-day loss by any company in history. Because if you can build frontier AI for around 6 million instead of hundreds of millions, what does that mean for the companies spending billions on data centers, on GPUs, on compute? So I did what anyone would. I downloaded the paper, started reading, and on page 3, I found it. Training via pure reinforcement learning. They didn't do what everyone else did. Okay, let me explain how AI models usually get trained. Step 1, pre-training. Learn language from internet data. Step 2, supervised fine-tuning. Learn from human examples. Step 3, reinforcement learning. Get rewarded for good answers. That second step, supervised fine-tuning, that's where you show the model thousands, millions of examples of good reasoning. Human experts writing out solutions, step by step. GPT-4 did this, Claude did this, every major model does this. DeepSeek skipped it. They called it DeepSeek R10. They took a base language model, one that just predicts the next word, and threw it directly into reinforcement learning. Here's how it worked. They gave the model math problems, hard ones, graduate-level competition questions. The model tries to solve it. It writes out its reasoning, step by step, on its own. If it gets the answer right, reward. Wrong, no reward. Try again. And something insane happened. Starting score, 15.6%. After RL training, around 70%. With multiple attempts, over 85%. It went from roughly 15% accuracy to over 85%. On some benchmarks, it even rivals OpenAI's O1, without a single human-labeled example. But look at how it reasons. Wait, that can't be right. If angle A is 60 degrees, then let me reconsider. Actually, I should use the cosine rule here. It's correcting itself mid-thought. Nobody taught it to do that. Approach 1 didn't work. Let me try a different method. It learned to reflect, to verify its own work, to try different strategies when stuck. They called these emergent behaviors, things that just appeared through trial and error, through millions of attempts. The model developed self-verification, reflection, and dynamic strategy adaptation without explicit supervision. So why did this work? When you show a model human examples, you're showing it one way to solve problems, the human way. But when you just reward correctness, let the model explore, it finds its own paths, sometimes better ones. Of course, there was a problem. R10 worked, but it was a mess. Language mixing, poor readability, it would sometimes just repeat itself forever. So they fixed it. DeepSeek R1, the final version. They kept the reinforcement learning core, but added one thing at the start, a tiny amount of high-quality examples. They called it cold start data. Supervised examples used. GPT-4, millions. DeepSeek R1, thousands. Just enough to teach the model basic formatting, how to separate reasoning from answers, how to stay in one language. Then they ran the reinforcement learning again at huge scale for around 2 months. And it started to match OpenAI's o1 on some of the hardest tests we have. AIME 2024 Math, OpenAI o1, about 79.2%. DeepSeek R1, about 79.8%. Coding benchmarks, OpenAI o1 around the 96th percentile on code forces. DeepSeek R1 around the 96th percentile. GPQA PhD level science. OpenAI o1 does better overall. DeepSeek R1 trails it but still lands in strong expert territory. Matched or came close on every major benchmark, sometimes slightly ahead, sometimes slightly behind. But here's the part that freaked everyone out. API cost per million tokens. OpenAI o1, $60 for outputs. DeepSeek R1, $2.19. DeepSeek is charging roughly 30 times less for generations. And they open-sourced it. The weights, the training methodology, enough details for others to follow the recipe. Tens of millions of users in just a few weeks. So people started asking questions. How did they do it so cheap? They used a technique called mixture of experts. The model has on the order of 670 billion parameters, but for any given token, only about 37 billion activate. Think of it like a team. You don't need everyone working on every problem. Just call in the right specialists. OpenAI's flagship models? Dense. Almost every parameter works on every task. More compute, more cost. But there's another question, the one Washington's asking. The US banned exports of its most advanced AI chips to China in 2022. NVIDIA's top H100s can't go there. So DeepSeek trained on H800s, the constrained export version, slower, restricted. They had about 2,048 of them for roughly 2 months, and they got results that rival labs burning through far more compute, which means either A, export controls aren't working, B, efficiency matters more than we thought, or C, both. Some people think DeepSeek is understating costs, that they spent far more on research, failed experiments, data, and infrastructure. Maybe, probably, but even if the true bill was tens of millions or even around 100 million, that's still a fraction of what Silicon Valley usually spends. And here's what nobody wants to say out loud. DeepSeek isn't alone. Alibaba released QN. ByteDance has its own models. Baidu is pushing its stack too. Many of them open source or close to it, all catching up fast. The US strategy was control the chips, control AI. DeepSeek just proved you can do more with less. January 20th, 2025. A Chinese lab almost nobody in the West had heard of released a model that could stand next to the best in the world. Rough training cost on the order of $6 million. Performance in the same league as models that may have cost hundreds of millions. Approach, a tiny bit of supervision, then massive reinforcement learning. Access, open weights and methods. They didn't need billions in funding. They didn't need unlimited compute. They didn't need millions of human labels. They just needed a different approach. And that's the breakthrough. Not just that they built a good model cheap, but that they showed everyone else how to do it. Tens of millions of people have already used or downloaded models built on these weights. Researchers, startups, students, they can all see exactly how it was done. The AI race just changed. What happens when the secrets get out?